We gotta talk about the current situation in Rise of Kingdoms and in the early game and even in the late game, because we got a huge problem. Before we go ahead and start the video, what's up going guys, my name is Nico and I welcome you yet to another video. Today guys, we are gonna take a look at some big problems, or one big problem that bothers me a lot, and that is the early game stage with commanders. Okay, what do I mean with that and why is there a problem? Well, let's compare some good commanders that we actually know that there are some problems. If we're gonna take a look here in the commander list, if we're gonna take a look at just leadership commanders, we're gonna take a look and there are two commanders that pop up that are actually usable even in the late game. Means Ethelflaed, because you get her for free. She will be probably your first commander to be expertise, unless if you're a Giga Whale, of course, then there will be other commanders, but she has some usage. Then we have Mehmed. Mehmed has some usage too, because he has a very strong museum buff. He has his second skill his second skill is very awesome, and yeah, he has some AoE damage and unit capacity, which is always very good and handy. But the rest of the commanders are pretty niche. Freddy is probably one of the worst commanders in KVK in one and in the game. Ragnar, unless he's expertise, he's not so usable. Same goes for Julius, and Hannibal Barca is pay to win. Now we also have the integration commanders, means gathering commanders, and in the gathering commanders we have Sundak. She's very good, she's a good gathering commander, but that's like it. Okay, Ichida is probably the worst commander. Same goes for Freddy. Cleopatra is a very nice and good commander, and Mulan has some niche usage in the late game, but only in Sunset Canyon. There is no other usage for her, maybe in Arc of Cyrus, but that's about it. Okay, but there is no broken commander in this integration. Now let's take a look at the archers. Archers have some good commanders like Tutmosis. Tutmosis is a very decent commander in the early game, and he has so many buffs and debuffs. If you're gonna take a look, healing reduction, archer bonus, archer attack bonus, march speed bonus, damage bonus, skill damage taken increase, defense bonus, counter attack reduction, and direct damage, and I think this is another buff. So he has a lot of buffs, a lot of debuffs. Tutmosis might be just very good in early game, and he has some good buffs in the museum, and I think there will come even more buffs, but that's like it. Okay, he doesn't have that much damage. He's more of a buff and debuff provider. So in late game, I don't think there will be a lot of players who will play him unless unless you are a whale and you were very lucky on his skills, then you can actually play him. Alcide is a bad commander, although his first two skills are pretty okay, because you will deal around 2000 damage, or you have like 10% chance to deal additional damage. And he has some decent buffs and stats, but like Moses is just way better. Okay, never ever use Alcide. And then we have YSG, who is probably the best commander, or at least top 3 commander in KVK1. YSG is very nice, very good, has some very huge damage, and unfortunately he doesn't have that many buffs. Like, yeah, he has some archer attack bonus, like 100%, which is really good, and of course has skill damage bonus, but there are like no stats on him, and he's very slow, so like a lot of commanders can actually catch up to him. So like YSG is very cool, and Herman is also a very decent commander, but that's about it. Now we're gonna take a look at the Cavs. Cavs have one very strong commander that is probably in the top 3 in KVK1 and maybe even in KVK2, and that is Minamoto. Minamoto is broken, or at least very strong, and has good usage even in the late game. He has a museum buff, and I guess the museum buff will be buffed a lot, so even in late game he has some usage. Same goes for Belisarius, but Belisarius is mainly just a farm killer because he's very fast. Means you will run to some farmers and then you will just attack them and then run away fast because his kit is built for it, so he's very good. Then we have Cao, that's a good commander but only in KvK 1. He's more or less same like Belisarius, just run somewhere, kill it and run away. That's like it, okay? Then we have Baibars. Baibars is also pretty okay, but like he's an epic commander, has some good AoE damage, but that's about it. And then we come to the problem that I actually have, and that is infantry. Infantry in the early game or in the early stages is so broken. First of all, you can get your hands on the best epic commander, that is Sun Tzu, and you can get him very freely because if you choose China, which I would recommend you, like Civilization China, Sun Tzu is very strong. He is a very strong commander. He's a very strong epic commander. In the early game, you really want to play Sun Tzu because first of all, you expertise him very fast and very easily. Second of all, his kit is very strong, has AoE damage over, I think it's around 1000 damage. AoE damage, has some buffs for the rage, has some, okay, this skill is pretty bad, healing factor and damage reduction, and of course skill damage bonus. So like, why wouldn't you want that? Sun Tzu is absolutely broken in the early game. He is great, but then the problem actually comes, okay? We have Bjorn, who is arguably one of the best epic commanders too for free-to-play players, so means you have two of the, I would say, top 3 commanders, epic commanders in the early game, and you have them in one unit, so like 2 very strong epic commanders in the infantry. And after you progress in the game a little bit, you will see there is Pyrrhus, there is Charles Martel, and there is Richard. Richard is the first Wheel of Fortune commander, and Richard is very strong. Richard has a very decent kit, like has a lot of healing factor and some buffs and debuffs, but what really Richard the First is known for is that he is a barb chainer, and he is also very good in Sunset Canyon. So you have Richard the First that in the early game almost no one will like kill or will be capable of killing a expertise or at least a 5/5/5/1 Richard the First. It's just not possible, okay? So if some whale has Richard the First and has invested into him, and there will be whales that will invest into him, you'll see that it is pretty much impossible to actually kill Richard the First. And then comes our more and biggest problems, and those are these two, okay? Charles Martel is broken, okay? Not only is his kit in the early game very strong, but he received recently a museum buff that is so strong, that is so busted. I think right now it's around 60 stats he gets when he's in the museum, once his museum buff is activated. And I think we got us, I think Belisarius Prime right now, the new commander that came, has around 75 or 80 stats in general that he gets from all of his skills. Charles Martel gets 60 stats just from museum buff. Like, come on, this is so huge, this is so big. That's just, I can't think about it clearly. Okay, so you have Charles Martel and Richard the First and Sun Tzu that are very strong in KvK 1. Then we also have Pyrrhus. Pyrrhus has so many good things about his kit. He has some direct damage factor, some bonus stats and shield, and of course bonus stats and bonus damage. His expertise is very okay because basic attacks has a chance to reduce the attacker's attack by 30%, which is really okay. It's not super huge, but it's okay. But you really want to look at his other stats because skill damage reduction, damage bonus, shield self, infantry attack bonus, uh, infantry health, infantry march speed, so he's not that slow, normal damage bonus, direct damage, normal damage bonus. Like Pyrus is awesome, okay, and you get him very early on, and then he has a huge museum buff. I mean, yes, I think it's 30 or 40 bonus stats, and he has 10 plus skill damage. Like, I think this might be just the pairing that you can use for getting your Guan Yu back in the game, because Guan Yu, when he's expertise, he's actually dealing more damage if he's shielded, and Pyrus has some in his kit there is a shield, means he is gonna shield himself, and of course um, skill damage bonus from his museum buff, and of course only infantry stats, so he's more or less very tanky, and he provides a lot of bonus. There is infantry bonus health, and I think his museum buff provides with defense, if I'm corrected. So like your Guan Yu will be way more tanky and will deal more damage just because you have unlocked or invested in the Pyrus. So what do I mean with the biggest problem that I actually right now have, especially in KVK 1 and KVK 2? Well, in KVK 1, cavalry commanders receive only Minamoto, that is very strong in the late, even in late game, and then you have like Baibars or Belisarius that you can actually use, but they are not strong enough to, in compared, for example, to Pyrus, Martel, or Richard I or Sun Tzu. Then you have archers that have only YSG that is playable in the late game. And yeah, you have Tutmosis that has some good stats and buffs and debuffs, but like in order for Tutmosis to work, you gotta unlock his expertise and museum buff, and then he is pretty okay. But that's like 2 commanders in compared against 4 commanders, and then you have like leadership where there are 2 support commanders that will be always secondary. You have the infantries, we have Pyrus, we have Martel, we have Richard I, we have Sun Tzu. So like you start with the best epic commander, you have the first commander in the wheel that is broken, then you have Martel and Pyrus that are so usable in the late game. So like what are we? I think this might be just the absolutely best of the best, and that is really unfair. For example, Caps have only one very strong unit, and then some good and okay and decent units, but only one very strong. Archers have one very strong, one strong, and that's about it. And then we have infantries who have 3 very very strong, the best epic commander which is strong, and Bjorn who is actually very strong too. And then it's not ending. In KVK 2 there will come Constantine, who is arguably the best commander for Sunset Canyon, and Alexander the Great that is absolutely broken. And especially right now he got a second museum buff, that means he's even more broken right now. And don't get me wrong, Saladin is okay in KVK 2, but he's nowhere near Alexander the Great. And the archers don't receive any buffs because Edward with Woodstock is a downgrade, and Tamiris is not only is she not strong enough, but Herman is just way better. Okay, there you have this video. I hope this is not so boring, because I'm not quite sure if it is. I think this is a big problem we have because infantry is just so broken in the early game. Make sure that you comment the video and subscribe to the channel, please. It will help me out a little bit. Thank you a lot. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.